podcast where two longtime friends and sometimes a guest talk about their favorite games from the perspective of an average player. My name is Andrew Kimball.
And I'm Dylan Wren, and we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the neighborhood. Thank you for spending part of your day with us today. This episode, we're diving into another topic here. We're going to be discussing backlogs, and we're not going to go nearly as in depth as I'm sure Dave would from Tales from the Backlog. But Dylan, what are we doing? How would you describe this episode?
Yeah, so this episode is another one of the ones that we kind of came up with as potential ones to become its own sort of reoccurring segment. And so this first one, I think, is going to be a little bit more broad, but maybe in the future, if people are interested, if people like this, we might, come back to the backlog well. Both of us certainly don't have small backlogs, so it's a very deep well. We've all got gaming backlogs as gamers. There's all these games that come out in these days. We live in a fantastic time where so many games come out and you just don't have the time to play them all. And so you end up putting some on the backlog. And so I thought it'd be fun to first, like I said, talk about just like backlogs in general, how ours fills up, that sort of thing. And then maybe talk about maybe some of our biggest shames that are on the backlog, or biggest things where it's like, yeah, I really do need to play that. It's been on my backlog for a while. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. But first, we're going to start the show with a little discussion about, hey, did you see all that Xbox stuff that they accidentally leaked?
Yeah, we would be remiss. It would be kind of insane for us to not touch on that in some way. And we thought about maybe doing an episode on it, but ultimately we landed on this. So we're going to kind of give our thoughts here about, probably one of the biggest leaks ever in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
GTA 6 was big when it happened, but that's one singular game.
Yeah.
And this is like we got to sit in a Xbox planning meeting for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So there were a bunch of things that were kind of leaked. Do you want to go through we've got the IGN article, so if you want to read it yourself, IGN's got a very good here is everything that has come out article.
Yeah,
but do you want to go by point by point, or do you just want to pick a few out that interest you?
I guess we can maybe just shout out these points and park on ones that are interesting, because the first one here is the Elder Scrolls 6 is an Xbox exclusive. That's kind of a nothing burger. I think we all figured that.
Yeah, that one. There are definitely still PlayStation fans melting down because they're not going to get to play the next Elder Scrolls 6. And 15 years from now when that game comes out, I'm sure that will be very sad for them. But
yeah, exactly.
It is you don't buy a studio. I think even Phil Spencer has said you don't buy a studio like Bethesda to just put their games on everything. It makes sense that they want to make those exclusives. I do feel for people who maybe don't have the abilities to, have multiple consoles or something like that. And so they aren't going to be able to play it. I do think it's easier to play an Xbox game than it is to play a PlayStation game.
Yeah, you'll be able to play it from your streaming dongle or whatever. And by the time it comes out, the landscape is going to be completely different by the time that game releases.
Yeah. And a point further down the list, there was some weird looking handheld thing, and I was just kind of oh, are they working on a Switch basically that streams Xbox games? That'd be pretty sweet. So I think there will be hopefully options where if you're a huge Elder Scrolls fan, don't have an Xbox or a PC capable of running it, you can do it. but also like, yeah, big video game company has an exclusive. Shocking. You know?
Right. The next one though was basically confirmation of a Switch follow up.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's been rumored for years. People keep, every time a Nintendo Direct rolls around, people are like, do you think this is the one where they're going to finally announce the Switch 2? People were convinced that with Tears of the Kingdom, they were going to launch like the Switch 2. That's why it was getting delayed or whatever. That's why it was taking so long to come out. That didn't end up happening.
I've heard these rumors since like before LPF started. So
Yeah.
I just I'm like, I feel like the dad driving on the road trip. We're going to get there when we get there. Like at this point, it's just going to happen when it happens.
Yeah, like I think because I mean, basically since the Switch came out, people had rumors of like a Switch 2 because it came out and it was like, what, as powerful as a 360, as a PS3?
Yeah,
when those consoles were like
a generation back. Yeah.
So, and I think they've said that like this one is like comparable to like the Xbox One PS4 generation. So there's still like a generation back, but also like generally no one cares because it's Nintendo and they utilize their hardware so much better, I think, than like any other publisher. So
yeah,
you don't you barely notice.
It is cool to get a little bit more solid, like kind of confirmation that it's happening. But I mean, like I said, we kind of know it's inevitable. It's just a matter of like when. So it does seem that it is kind of on the horizon there, which is pretty cool. Then the next thing was Fallout 3 and Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion potentially getting the remaster, maybe remake treatment, which that sounds cool. I'd love to go back and check out Fallout modernized. We kind of touched on that on our Starfield episode, and then now, Oblivion.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
So Bethesda's been re-releasing Skyrim for like the past 10 years, right?
Right.
Do you think that this Fallout 3 Oblivion remaster is like do you think it will fundamentally change the game at all? Or do you think it's basically just a shinier coat of paint and it will play exactly like Oblivion plays and exactly like Fallout 3 plays? Because I'm kind of torn on, because like they didn't really change Skyrim ever, right? Granted, it was not as old of like a thing.
No, I mean, they did make it look a little bit better, but yeah, no, if that's the thing, if it's just like a fresh coat of paint and the bones are exactly the same, it won't be as exciting. If they put a little bit more effort into modernizing some of it, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But even a Oblivion that looks more like Skyrim or looks maybe better than Skyrim, I would probably check out. It probably wouldn't be enough for me to like get into Fallout ultimately, but I've wanted to replay Oblivion before, since in a post Skyrim world, but I mean, old game is old. And so it'd be kind of cool. I could see them doing like a fresh coat of paint and then some quality of life stuff up to the level of Skyrim, maybe even Starfield, but then, Starfield created new quality of life issues. So it's like, I don't know. That's the thing. We have so little information, just that like, oh, it's a thing they're thinking about doing. It even says that it was like a 3-year-old document for Bethesda's release schedule prior to the acquisition. So this whole thing could be scrapped.
Yeah, exactly.
But they also said that they want to, I kind of group these two together. They want to do a updated Series X and Series S next year. And then they're also planning a full-on new next-gen console for 2028.
Yeah, and they're also like on the hardware side, they're also working on some like different controllers, different like that kind of stuff too.
Right.
So
they had like a cloud controller or something in there.
Mm-hmm.
Console, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it sort of makes sense. I do there were rumors and conversations about Xbox going more the dongle route and stuff like that, but they also know that they have a huge audience of hardcore gamers, so like a real console is kind of a must for them. The thing that gets me is these refreshes next year. I don't feel like games are utilizing the full potential, or if they are barely, of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X currently. Like other than aesthetics and maybe a few little bells and whistles, I don't see the point of having this like refresh.
Well, yeah, because like they're releasing them. I think it's like some updates or whatever. Maybe it's just like the old parts are now costing more to make because they're outdated, and like the chip manufacturers have shifted to like different chips or better chips or something. I don't know enough about like building a console to know. But yeah, it's a little like, because the pricing is going to be the same from what I can tell.
Yeah.
I think they're both maybe diskless, but also
Yeah,
like
they are.
I I don't know that I own like a Series X disc. Obviously, I have some Xbox One discs, but like since the Series X has come out, I don't think I've purchased a physical game. So
Yeah, no, the
I
digital
know,
thing makes sense.
yeah, I guess they're putting some more RAM in there, which
Hmm.
theoretically can help. But like you said, are they really utilizing
It's got more
everything yet?
storage and it's got more RAM. So like
Yeah, the more storage is cool.
yeah, they're doubling the storage. It's got more RAM, and then it's small, more compact. It looks more like an Amazon Alexa or something, so maybe not quite so gaudy sitting on your
Yeah,
entertainment center. But yeah, like as far as the guts, I mean, they were making a big deal about how like the current consoles are capable of 8K and all this stuff, and it's like games are not doing that yet.
yeah,
Games are still coming out on the PS4.
yeah,
They're still coming out for like last gen stuff. So this feels, maybe they're really going to push the aesthetics of it, and that's going to be the selling point, like, oh, it's so small and whatever. But
yeah,
it like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X felt worth it. Like they felt like pretty substantial upgrades, making your games run and look better. Like the Xbox One X could actually run things at higher frame rates. It could go full 4K. Like it was a step up. These feel like, yeah, that's it's almost like the iPhone model. It's like, yeah, the
yeah,
camera is a little bit better, but if you have last gen's iPhone, I would not spend $1,200 on a new one.
yeah. Like I don't. To me, this is more of like, hey, maybe more people will go, and like if you're getting a new Xbox, it makes sense to get the new shinier one
Right?
with more
Yeah,
storage. But it's not one that I see people who already have an Xbox being like, well, let me trade this in and get the new model.
yeah. And like you said, maybe there are some manufacturing things on their end where it's like, oh, this one's easier to produce, so we'll shift to making these, and this will be what we make going forward. Who knows? But
Yeah, maybe there's something where they're trying to like get a bigger install base by dropping the price on like the older models or something.
yeah,
They are, like you said, planning on making a new console, shooting for maybe 2028. That's still, obviously a long way away. But also, like anyone, like that's, to me, that was very much like, well, duh. Like obviously they've got a team of people who's thinking about what the next one's going to look like. Like that's the thing that's cool to me is there's on there listed for like less than $100, like a handheld screen with controllers on the side, kind of like a Switch, for less than like $100
I wonder if
that
that
could do
screen is
the
like your
cloud.
phone.
Yeah, that'll be like how big the screen is, I think will really be a big deal, but I think that could be really cool.
I was thinking about the refreshes. Like, I guess on a timeline, it makes sense. I wonder if if maybe they were expecting games to be moving quicker than they are. Because if you, on paper, we release our console in 2020, 2024, we do our
Yeah.
refresh, 2028, we do our next console. So it
Yeah.
makes sense on paper. But like I
But then
said,
2020 happened.
yeah, and games just have not, they're taking longer to make. They're still coming out on like last gen consoles. A lot of stuff feels like it's holding them back. So it's like maybe this timeline will shift. Who knows?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and like you said too, like until things are really, really pushing the limits of the console, like I'm sure there are more powerful PCs out there, like 100%. That's not a question. But also, like, are those more powerful PCs doing anything other than giving you like 1,000 frames a second or whatever? Like, does it graphically look better beyond just the frames? It doesn't look more realistic, like that games are not looking more realistic. It's just they are running smoother. which past a certain point, if you're not playing like a competitive shooter, doesn't seem to matter. So
yeah, like they do things with like reflections and lighting and stuff, obviously that helps, but ultimately, yeah, like we're not. I think about like Ratchet and Clank, which had this whole promise of like shifting between dimensions and all this, and those ended up being. I haven't played that game yet, but from what I've heard, it's a little bit more like scripted. I think about things like that like only next gen consoles can do. It's like, yeah, we've got big games and fast load times and stuff like that, but I haven't seen anything that's like, oh wow, there is no way
yeah,
that this could run on an Xbox One or a PS4. Like, I mean, we haven't seen that. We've gotten Horizon and God of War and all these games that look great and play great and everything. We've got them on the last gen consoles, and those
yeah.
are even exclusives being made for one specific platform. So that's not even third party stuff. But
Yeah.
uh, you want to gloat real quick?
Yeah. So I don't even think I've made this prediction on like this Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers, but we used to, our old show, Level Playing Field, we used to like get together and do like a yearly like prediction show as well. And so one of my go-to predictions is just kind of like throwing a few publishers out there, a few developers out there that I think Microsoft's going to pick up or try to pick up. And so one year I threw Nintendo out there because I was like, yeah, I can see them wanting to get Nintendo. It's not really a competitor, and it fills a niche that they don't really have. Nintendo makes younger skewed games, which they don't have like really any because they refuse to make a new Banjo-Kazooie. So, but it came out in this that Phil Spencer really wants to buy Nintendo. And also, as an Xbox fan, I am going to say I don't think that would be good. I don't think Microsoft buying Nintendo would be good. I think that would be much more of like a them buying Activision, Blizzard, whatever. Like people are like, oh, is that a monopoly? Blah blah blah. Is that going to be bad for gaming because it's reducing competition? I don't really think so. There, I do think them buying Nintendo would reduce competition and be bad. So
Yeah,
I
yeah, and even on a more kind of just like symbolic note, it would be like we have these three core pillars of like our console gaming world, and if one buys the other, it would just be like it'd be like watching a lion kill a gazelle or something and just eat its corpse. It's like, man, Nintendo.
Yeah, I would much rather see some sort of partnership where
Yeah,
they get xCloud working on a Switch like natively, not jailbroken, and call it a day there, because then you have that audience,
right.
and you're like their Game Pass subscribers, which is what Nintendo or what Xbox cares about anyway.
Yeah, it's probably Nintendo that's gonna kind of.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like those are the biggest ones. Are there any other ones you wanted to shout out?
In other sad news, they like 2022 was a bad time for Microsoft. They had a lot of delays that they were really planning on coming out, and so they were scrambling to try to get stuff on Game Pass. And they passed on getting Baldur's Gate exclusively on Game Pass or whatever, and buying Larian Studios. And as someone whose computer is not good enough to run Baldur's Gate right now, and I have to hear about Andrew buying it on PlayStation and then not playing it because Lies of P came out, I'm just like, we could have had it. We could have had it, Xbox. We could have been playing Baldur's Gate right now.
What I thought was interesting about that story was they made like a snarky comment about it being like a second run Stadia PC RPG. And actually, like the head of Larian or whoever came to their defense when they were getting kind of like scrutinized for that comment and was like, to be fair, like everybody was kind of talking about our game like that back then at that point. Like it was not what it is today.
Yeah, like Divinity Original Sin was good, regularly held up as an excellent game, but it was a cult game, you know, like it has a cult following.
Right.
Like there's not a ton of people who are playing it. Baldur's Gate is kind of their first big blow up success. And so like if you're a business trying to make a good business decision, that seems risky, you know?
Exactly.
And it seems very niche, whereas like Baldur's Gate seems to be all over the place. So
I did notice somewhere in there that they mentioned trying to get the Dark Souls games on Game Pass, and I was like, yes, let's do
Yeah.
that. Except I own them all now, but
Yeah.
still,
Yeah. See, well, I have a disc for Dark Souls 3. I would love for them to get Dark Souls 3 so that I don't have to put the disc in my Xbox anymore.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was back from when I hadn't fully given up on buying discs. But yeah, a lot of it, like I said, was kind of, oh yeah, that makes sense that they're developing a new console. That makes sense that they might want to buy like a really good video game developer, like, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it is interesting that a leak this massive happened supposedly by accident on Microsoft's side. It wasn't like the FTC messed up or something. It was like, oh shoot, some intern like accidentally sent it to the wrong people or whatever. But yeah, so we wanted to talk about it, but didn't feel like we had enough to say about it to make it its own full episode. But it is interesting to see.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a lot there. It's from like a hobbyist side of things. It is kind of neat to see like
Behind the curtain,
the veil. Yeah, the veil pulled back and be like, oh, okay, like this is like the nuts and bolts of what's going on with a big player in the industry. So
it's like, oh, weird. They are a business. And
yeah,
half the stuff that we speculated on was true. And the other half, we had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed, or I guess I should say, if you also are interested in these leaks, if you want to talk to people about them, hop in our Discord, throw it out there. I'm sure there will be lots of people happy to share their opinions about it in there with you. Dylan, you ready to move into our main topic?
Yeah. Let's jump into it.
All right, let's move into our main topic for this episode. Backlogs.
Yes. So, how do you define a backlog? I think that's probably where we need to start, because I think, you know, some people have like a very specific like list of like,
yeah,
this is my backlog and this is, I'm playing them in order, checking them off sort of thing. Other people, it's just like any game that I own / have access to that I haven't played yet is my backlog.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask you the same question because I was thinking about it. Like, for me, it's very messy. It's like, I wouldn't consider all of Game Pass my backlog. But basically, if it's like in my library, and especially if I've paid money for it, then it's in my backlog. Then there's kind of like, I have like some unorganized mental layers of like, there's just everything I have in my backlog. Then there's some stuff that I put there for a specific purpose. Like maybe that would be a fun game to play with my kids someday, or maybe that would be a fun game, you know, for this situation. Then there's the games that's like, oh, this is in my backlog and I should play this. Like everyone keeps saying it's good or whatever. So like there's different criteria. I'm kind of curious if you've played a game, like you mentioned me starting Baldur's Gate 3 and then switching to Lies of P.
Yeah.
Is Baldur's Gate now put back in the backlog?
I think that's again, I think that's one of those things where you know, everybody's kind of got their different lines. Like,
or have I now played it? So now it's a game I have played.
I definitely don't think it's a game you've played. I don't think you can claim that. Like, have you technically sat down and booted up and, you know, done character creation and a little bit of the story? Sure, but
I've probably got like creeping up on 10 hours in that game at this point.
Still, it's 100.
It's 100 something hour game, but yeah.
But is it I think at that point it becomes like one of those where it's like, okay, does it move to the backlog of like, I intend to come back to this and finish it? Is it a game that you are currently playing because you could technically like switch back to it? You know, are you playing multiple games at the same time?
I guess that's probably where that would be right now. Yeah.
Or is it one, you know, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later. Like at what point does it become like, yeah, I'm not going to go, like, you might know immediately, like, oh yeah, this game is not for me. Or it might be like something where it's like, how long does it kind of just sit there until it's like, yeah, I'm not going back to that. So, but yeah, it's tough for me too, because it's like, okay, is Destiny 2 on my backlog right now? Like I haven't been on Destiny 2 in a little bit. Is it in a backlog? Is it a game that I'm current like I would almost consider it a game that I'm always kind of playing, but not necessarily like actively playing. I don't know. Like
I think if a
it's
game is installed,
yeah.
it's not in my backlogs. Like The Witcher 3 and Bloodborne never are in the backlog, even though I'm not actively playing them, but they're like always installed. I could, if the urge hits me, I could just hop in at any time. I think that's like the top level of maybe the backlog, or like the
Yeah. Like easily accessible. I don't
transition.
have to
Yeah.
wait like 30 to 3 hours, like 30 minutes to 3 hours for this game to
play it.
install.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, yeah, I liked what you said about Baldur's Gate. Like, these are games I'm playing, or I could hop into at any time. Because like right now, I literally have like, well, now that Starfield's kind of done,
Yeah,
I think I have like 3 games I'm actively playing probably.
Well, and Starfield, I think, is a good example. Would you consider Starfield in your backlog, or would you consider yourself done with Starfield?
I'm done with Starfield.
Okay, so like you've played it, you've been like, yeah, this is not really my type a game, and it's now not in the backlog. It's just I'm not going to play this probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's interesting too that you mentioned like Bloodborne and The Witcher, because I would consider those games that like you've beaten them multiple times. You've platinumed Bloodborne. You've is there a point where you would consider yourself like not like the game is maybe on like a shelf somewhere that's not like the backlog, but also not.
Yeah, those might not have been the best examples.
Yeah,
Trying to think of, like, I guess like
like
I guess like a lot of, like you mentioned, Destiny multiplayer games fit this better, where it's like I'm always kind of like people play Fortnite and they're kind of always playing Fortnite. So like for me, and I guess Fortnite wouldn't really be in my backlog because like I've tried it. It's not really my thing, but like I would install it if somebody really wanted to play like one night or something. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess what I think as we're discussing this is that the backlog is games I intend to play.
Yeah.
And then once I've played them, they move to some other unnamed category, either beaten, either forever games, either games that I didn't like, but they've moved from want to play to played, or should play to played.
Yeah, like a kind of like the backlog is kind of the like
the holding area.
Yeah, like I've got to sort through this before I can put it in like, this is a game I'm going to continue to play. This is a game that I have decided is not for me. This is a game that like I've beaten, and like I've recently gone back to Elden Ring, and so it's like I have all the achievements, I've done everything, like I'm just going back because I enjoy that game. And so it's like it's not something that I considered in my backlog as like, oh, I need to go back and play that. It was more so like, I think we talked about nostalgia games and we talked about Elden Ring or something, and I was like, you know what, I do want to play Elden Ring again. So I started.
Yeah, like I downloaded a game from Games with Gold. I mentioned a few, like probably quite a few episodes back at this point, called The Veil, where like you play as a blind character, and it's installed, and it's a game that I'm like, one evening I'm gonna sit down and check this game out because it sounds interesting. I want to see what it's about, but I haven't done it yet. So that's like a backlog game. Yeah. It's like a game that I intend to play. I want to play. I will maybe someday play, or at the very least just try out,
Yeah.
But I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, because once I start trying out a game, it can go back on the backlog, is the other thing. Kind of like you with Baldur's Gate. At this point, I kind of consider maybe I put Elden Ring back on the backlog, or Spider-Man 2, I guess, is a good example of like, I was playing some Spider-Man 2.
You have Spider-Man 2?
Or Spider-Man, the first one, whatever.
Oh man, I was
not the GameCube game.
Oh yeah, that's Spider-Man 2.
But like I've been playing through the Spider-Man on PS4, and I took a break from that because Liza P came out, and so we're both playing through Liza P right now. And so I need to like go back, and I intend to pick that game back up because I feel like that's probably how most games get on my backlog, is like I check something out, I'm trying it, and then something else happens, something else takes my attention, and like I keep meaning to go back to that game, and then it just sits there for like a week, and then it sits there for like a month, and then I need to make room to install something else, and that game gets like booted, and at that point it's like solidly on the backlog of like I need to get back to this game, but I have uninstalled it now.
So for you, backlog means I need to get back to this, not it's backlogged because I need to get to it in the first place.
I mean, there are definitely like most of the PS4 library exclusives are like that for me, where it's like I need to play. I don't need to, but like I want to play God of War. I want to play The Last of Us Part 1 and 2. I want to play
Days Gone, say it.
Days Gone. That's the one. So because basically the only game that I have played on PlayStation is Bloodborne, and I've dabbled in some Spider-Man. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's such a like it's a term everybody uses, but when you really try to like narrow it down and define it, it's really slippery.
Yeah, because I think we talked about this a few episodes ago, but just kind of like the idea that I have to be in the mood for a certain type of game, where it's like it's hard for me to like have a backlog that is like, okay, I'm going to like get to this one, like basically like here's the homework I have to do, let me do it in order, because there's a lot of them where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really in the mood for like a spooky dark The Last of Us like depression pit, you know. I'd rather play something a little bit more upbeat and happy, like I hope Spider-Man is. So.
Yeah, for the most part. I admire Dave for how he does his show, and there was another podcast that I listened to at one time where I don't know, I think it was randomly, it was a couple, and they would each, I don't know if they picked for the other person or if they just did the random wheel for the other person or whatever, however they determined it, but it wasn't really as structured. But they each would play a game from their backlog or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they would talk about it on the next episode. And for me personally, I know I could do that as a structure, but I don't think I would be giving my like potential most genuine thoughts on a game because of exactly what you just said. If we did a series or an episode like that, where, I mean, we even tried it with the Game Pass report on LPF.
Yeah.
It was like, if I have to sit down and play this game and it's not what I'm in the mood for, then it's going to taint my opinion of it, because I'm going to be sitting there like, that's kind of how I felt with Starfield, because Baldur's Gate 3 had come out, or I had gotten it on PlayStation, and I also am playing Sea of Stars and really enjoying that. And so I was like, well, I have some time to game.
Yeah.
I have these two games that I like that I'm enjoying, but I should play more Starfield so that I can more educatedly talk about it on our episode that's coming up. And so I would sit there and I'd play Starfield for a couple hours and be like, this is fine. Like, I see how people could like this, but it's not grabbing me. Whereas if Starfield was the only game that was out right now, and especially if I had paid my own money for it, I wonder if I would have tried a little harder and maybe it could have hooked me. And maybe in like next summer, I might jump into Starfield again and give it another shot and be like, oh, wow, it clicked this time.
Yeah.
But right now, there's so many factors going in that are working against it that it didn't happen.
Yeah. And, you know, same boat. Although I didn't really have a bunch of other stuff I was playing other than like Elden Ring for like the 15th time. But like I played Starfield and I was like, yeah, I get it. But also I think it leaves a lot to be desired for what I was looking for in the game. So
right.
Maybe it was tainted, maybe it wasn't, you know, who knows. But yeah, it's definitely a different thing where you have to like, if you're trying to do it to like stay current, to talk about it when it's the zeitgeist, because we don't do that a ton. Like a lot of times we're talking about an older game that like we don't have the zeitgeist, you know, Tears of the Kingdom came out, we were talking about Breath of the Wild. So,
yeah, we're usually a little bit behind at the very least.
Yeah. When we're trying to talk about something that is more current, sometimes you do run into that, like, oh, okay, I'm playing this because I feel like I have to now,
Yeah, it's something that I wonder about, or that I take into consideration, I guess, with game reviews, is like, obviously when Elden Ring comes out and they put the Souls guy on it, and it's like one of the most anticipated games of, like, for sure the year, maybe the last few years. It's like, yeah, that person's going to be like, hell yeah, I can't wait to play this game 25 hours a day for the next like 7 days.
Yeah.
But you put them on some like 6, 7 out of 10 game that maybe isn't their thing or they're not in the mood for, like, how do you separate that bias from your ultimate review? And it's like, that's the human element of all of it.
Yeah, you give it a 7 out of 10 IGN and
exactly
move on.
7 out of 10. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. That was they do a lot of 7s too, but 8 was my prediction. I cannot wait to read that list off when we revisit that at the end of the year.
Yeah. Did you see Donkey's latest video?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Yep. Which probably is not his latest video. It was the one where he was talking about how to be a game reviewer, since saying his latest video on a podcast that's coming out in 2 weeks is not helpful. So
I did think, not to go down that tangent too long, but I did think he did a good job of like picking on the gamers and the reviewers. So
exactly. But yeah, we've talked about backlogs kind of in general. What's a game do to get on a backlog? Like we said, other games coming out for me. I put a lot of stuff on the backlog through sales, which I think you do as well, of just like, oh, okay, I've got this game is like $3. I've heard Andrew say it's like, what's that 2D side scroller, Katana
Zero?
Like, that's on my backlog. I have it on Switch because it was like on sale for like $2, and I know you would like love that game. And so I was like, oh, I'll pick it up and I'll, try it out. Still on my backlog, still installed. Yeah. Sales do that hardcore, especially like if you pick up like a Humble Bundle or something like that, that's like, here's 15 games. Like, congrats.
That's the problem with being an adult gamer, is that like as a kid, you got maybe a few games a year if you were lucky, either as gifts or you got your own money that you could spend on them. And so you just like lived in those games. Now, like, I'm like, oh, that game sounds interesting. It's either already kind of cheap, maybe it's a budget game, or it's on sale. I'll pick that up so I can check it out. A game that comes to mind is Solstice, which is a game that has hopped on and off my backlog a few times. It's kind of a double A stylish action game, very Berserk inspired, and every time I boot it up, I have a lot of fun with it. I've played it probably like 3 or 4 times, but then every time something else a little bit higher profile or a little bit like bigger or more exciting to me comes out, I jump to that. And Solstice hasn't been uninstalled. I keep looking at it and going, man, I need to get back to that. That was, it's a fun game. I'm enjoying it. But so like, I have a lot of games where I'll just, you mentioned Switch, like I have a Switch wish list that, a lot of them are indies and stuff. Like you said, Katana Zero on sale for $3 or something. I'll see a game on there. Oh, it's $4 right now, $5, maybe even 10. Let me scoop that up. When am I going to play it?
Yeah. Yep.
So you have more money / opportunities to acquire games than time. And that's not even taking into consideration like PS Plus, Ultimate Super Saiyan or whatever, and then Game Pass. Like,
yeah, best deal in gaming.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I mean, like there's even taking out of the equation, like just having more money, there's just so many more games coming out.
Right.
A few weeks ago, we were doing like some random like game for like an episode, and the jump from like how many games came out on the GameCube to how many games came out on the Wii was like exponential,
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so I'm sure that kind of thing is still going on, where it's just like there are so many more games coming out. Maybe not, big AAA high budget stuff, but even those I think are coming out more frequently than, they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So put a lot of games on. How long does a game have to be on there before you just kind of give up and admit you're never going to play it? Or do you do that?
I never admit it. I will never admit defeat.
Yep.
I don't know. I have games that I technically own that are on my backlog, if you're being very technical, where it's like, this is the collection of games in my library that I've purchased, where I've never played them and probably never will. I have like Brave, the Xbox 360 Pixar video game. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was given away or something. And so I picked it up thinking maybe someday my daughter would like to play that or whatever. By the time she is old enough to play that game, she's probably going to be old enough to be like, this game is kind of bad. So like, I just have a lot of games that were either free or whatever that it's like, will I ever play these? Nah, I don't know. I think it's a different story when I start a game, because like Solstice, for example, I will play that to the point where I'm done with it, or play it to where I beat it eventually.
Yeah.
Or I will, like I did with Starfield, I'm going to play it, not vibe, and put it down. And I think those are not what this question is asking. I think this question is asking like, hey, you've had this game on your backlog for 2 years. Are you ever actually going to play it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause that's, I would say, a lot of times how stuff ends up on my backlog is like, okay, I pick it up on sale, install it, and jump in, maybe try it out for an evening or something like that. And then unless I play it all the time, like if something else comes along and distracts me, and that game just kind of sits there unplayed to the point where it's like eventually it gets uninstalled, which usually is after like a couple of months, I think that's when it goes way down in likelihood of me actually ever playing it. Like I still have every intention, but the longer it sits, like maybe 3 months, I would say it's highly unlikely that I'll ever make it back to that. It's never zero, I don't think, because I do think that there are some. Famously, The Witcher 3 sat on my backlog for like 7 years, and I would like pop in and dabble in it every now and then before finally like actually sitting down and beating it. But there are also a lot of other games that I've like picked up on sale, like Far Cry, whatever the one in like Montana or whatever it is,
5.
Wyoming 5. Like I've got that. It's on my backlog.
Same.
I played it for like a few days and eventually like needed space, uninstalled it. It's now sat unplayed for 6 months. Am I ever realistically going to go back and play Far Cry 5? Probably not. Might I? Maybe. But will I? Probably not.
Yeah, it's hard to fully give up on. I think there's also something to be said for like, what games you like. So like, it's hard to fully give up on games because, for example, I have Need for Speed Payback on my PlayStation library. I will realistically never play that game unless somebody comes over and is like, oh man, you have Payback, let's play that. And I'm like, okay, I guess. I have The Order. 1886 was on my backlog for a long time, at least since I got my PS5, because I think it was part of the collection.
Yeah.
I finally jumped into it, last year? I love that game. I had a great time with that. Once I started it, I didn't stop playing it till I beat it. It's not super long, but like I was hooked and I was very sad. I joined the club of people that were sad that we may never get a sequel. So, but like, I know that I'm much more likely to like The Order 1886 than I am Need for Speed Payback. So it's like, there is kind of like, if you had some sort of Souls-like or some sort of a game on your backlog that was like, oh, this is my jam. That game, you're probably not going to give. Like, if I asked you, are you ever going to play that? You'd be like, yes, I will. Eventually, I'm going to play that one. But if I asked you if you're ever going to play Need for Speed Payback, you'd be like, realistically, probably not.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So we've already kind of talked about like, is our list short, long? I think both of ours are pretty long lists because we've got a lot of things on there.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So I think jumping into kind of the next part is, like what are some of the big ones? What are obviously, like we've said, we don't really have a like solid order. Although I do think it'd be interesting, like if people are interested and like this format, we could definitely maybe sit down and actually put like an order together.
Like rank our
Yeah.
top 10 biggest backlog games or something.
Yeah, maybe do something for like the new year of like I'm gonna at least try out these games this next year or something like that. Like, but I know for myself, like I said, a lot of the PS4 stuff is on there. God of War, Spider-Man, Days Gone, Last of Us, Uncharted. Like all of those I think are ones that are like I really would like to play those because I have not, and I know that they're beloved by a lot of people. I think those are definitely big, high up on my list. Another one is I really want to get back and finish Persona 5 Royal. It's just so long. It's so long
Yeah.
that other things come out while I'm playing it that I want to play, and I get distracted and I just don't end up ever going back. And so it's, it's a game that I'll hop into and play for like a week and a half, and then some other game comes out that I want to, like Liza P, or, I'll jump into it and Baldur's Gate will finally come on to Xbox and I'll get to play that. And so it'll be, that's one that I want to play so bad, but keeps getting kind of bumped down the list because there are all these other games out there that are new and shiny and I want to try them. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, if we're talking about games that we want to finish, like Hollow Knight for me, I've put so much time into Hollow Knight. I played it, thought I was doing pretty good, then fell off of it for whatever reason, went back to it, started a new game, realized I hadn't really gotten that far. But now I feel like I'm at a point where like I've made some substantial progress in that game. And so it's like, it's one that like that on paper should be my thing. And I do enjoy playing it and I want to see where it goes, but it's just so easy for me to fall off for other games. I'm trying to think, and I'm like kind of looking at my PlayStation library. I know like Mass Effect is a big one for me. I've dabbled in the first game, but that was like earlier this year where this year is just so stacked with games that it's like I fell off that. Honestly, I wasn't having a bad time. The first one is pretty dated. So when I go back, I may just jump to 2, but it just like something else came out, grabbed my attention.
Yeah, because I'm looking through my like list of Xbox games, and Prey and Dishonored 2, Dead Space 2, I need to finish. Marvel's Midnight Suns, I've played for 34 hours and have been having a great time with, but other stuff came out and I got distracted and I haven't gone back to it since. It's still installed, so it hasn't like gotten that nail in the coffin yet, but
right.
Like we'll see once Liza P and Spider-Man are done. Like at that point, I'll have to be making some decisions of like, am I going to pick up Lords of the Fallen? Am I going to pick up Alan Wake 2? Am I going to pick up Phantom Liberty? Is that Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty? Yeah. Or am I going to wait for sales on those things? And so if I wait for sales on all of that stuff, then there might be some time where it's like, oh, okay, like now I have a free slot where I could maybe slot that in if I'm looking for that game.
Yeah, another game that I've started and we'll get back to someday is Nier Replicant. I want to finish that game. Hi-Fi Rush I started this year and it fell off. These are games that like I've started and fallen off. They're games that I know I should play. I feel like I do a decent job unless I just pick things up on like a sale. I do a decent job of knowing like, or of not acquiring games until I'm ready to play them, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like I always hear Disco Elysium is so great. I don't own that on anything, but whenever it's finally
on Game Pass.
When did it come to Game Pass?
Recently.
Oh, cool.
I think it's on Game. I'm like 99% sure it's on Game Pass.
Well, okay, so I still don't own it, but I rent it, so I could play it there. But like that would be an example of like whenever I do either download it or buy it, I'm going to dive in. So then it's not really on the Game Pass. It will, or on the backlog, it will have been played by then. So it does make it maybe a little tricky for me to find games that I should play but haven't yet, but that I also already own. There are games that like I know I should play, and I might like Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I know is another one that is
Yeah,
on Game Pass or was.
Yeah, that's another one that's on my list of like, I've gotten pretty far into that game. I need to go back and play it because it's so good. It's so good, and I'm excited for the new one that's coming out.
Yeah. So I mean, I know I have like Neo 2 on PlayStation. That's one I'd like to dive into at some point. But yeah, there's so many games.
Yeah.
Another game from this year that I haven't bought, but that I would like to play is Remnant 2. Which, you know, that came out this year, which is crazy. It's not on my backlog because I don't own it, but
I thought Disco Elysium was on Game Pass, but maybe it is not. Maybe it has come and gone.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah. I could swear I saw it installable for me at some point, so I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of ones that I feel like I need to get to and finish and play.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something we could definitely like expand upon if we did decide to kind of revisit this well, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I don't think we come back to it super often, but it's the type of thing I could see every, every quarter, like every few months or something. It's like, okay, we said this is a game, or we wanted to try out these like 2 or 3 games. How'd it go? Is that a game for you? Is that not? So I think that kind of wraps up a lot of the conversation on Game Pass. Or not Game Pass, backlogs.
I know I did the same thing. There is like one, bullet point you had in here about like, is there one that we're going to commit to playing or,
Oh yeah.
There is maybe not one we're going to commit to playing for ourselves, but we did make predictions earlier this year, and the stakes for that is that the winner gets to pick a game for the loser to play, and then we'll do an episode on it. So there will be that to look forward to, potentially something getting pulled out of the backlog unwillingly because of the bet we made.
Yeah. I know for myself, we are planning on doing a Spider-Man PS4 episode around the time that Spider-Man 2 is coming out on PlayStation 5. So if I'm going to be on that episode, I have to actually like play most of, if not all of Spider-Man.
Exactly.
So I am intending to do that and play that. I would also love to finish Alan Wake before Alan Wake 2 comes out, but that game is good, but also I have to be in the mood for it. So
Does Alan Wake 2 come out pre-Halloween?
It comes out sometime in October.
Okay.
I forget if it's like beginning of the month or if it's closer to the end. I think it's closer to the end of the month, and I think Lords of the Fallen is maybe the one towards the beginning, but I could have those reversed.
Well, I'm going to be going on a bit of a road trip here in the near future, and I'll probably bring my Switch, so maybe I'll pull something out of the backlog when I'm traveling. We'll see.
Yeah. Something that is easy and quick. Like that is the thing with the Switch, I think, is that theoretically it should be easier to clear a backlog on the Switch because it's more accessible, like you don't need the TV, you can just play it. But at the same time, that's a lot of times the things in my backlog are I think things where I feel like I have to pay more attention to them, because those are the type of games that I tend to like put in there because I'm like, I want to actually like sit down and pay attention and focus on this game versus like on Switch, especially, I want something that I can just like zone out and like play while, I'm watching a baseball game and like listening to music or, whatever. So,
right. Yeah. You can be doing a run in Dead Cells and still like chatting with the person in the room next to you or whatever, but you don't have to give it your 100% full attention necessarily. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think that's about it for this topic. I like we said, I think we could definitely kind of expand upon it or dive a little deeper in some of these areas.
I did just have a thought though.
Yeah.
I would love for there to, at least on console, there's probably something on Steam that does this better, and I'm 100% sure there's apps and like websites that give you the ability to do this. But I would love, just on Xbox natively, to be able to make a ranked list of my backlog, so that when I'm going in there and like looking for a game to play, it's like, boom, I want to go play, like, hey, this game is on your backlog, maybe go play that, like being able to organize like my, like, I know you can do it kind of like on the home screen. You can like pin stuff to the home screen and stuff. But like, I'd love for there to be like, after having this conversation, I'm probably going to sit down and make an Excel sheet that has like my backlog on it.
You're that kind of nerd.
But that's just me.
Right.
But I would love for it to be like and maybe they don't do it, because like if you are constantly in like bombarded with in your face, like, this is your backlog, are you sure you want to spend money? Like,
yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I do think that would be nice to be like, oh, okay, like, because with Game Pass and everything, like when you go look at your games on Xbox, especially if you've been buying them digitally for like 10 years like I have, there's now like 500 games there, because between like Game Pass, EA, and just like all of the games with gold that have been given away for years.
Yeah.
And, and so it's just kind of like, what game do I want to play? Now I have to like scroll through this and kind of like see what I want to play. And it'd be nice to be able to like pin some to the top and be like, hey, these are the ones you've kind of like curated out of this huge list of as ones you want to play soon.
Well, hold on. Let me let's see. We got Elder Scrolls 6 console exclusive, updated consoles, Red Dead 2 remaster. Nope, nothing.
That's another one on my list. Red Dead 2.
Nothing here about backlog organization tools, so I guess you're gonna have to wait till at least 2028.
Maybe, I don't know. They tend not to talk about like because they definitely did not talk about whatever the new Xbox dashboard is that I constantly mess up trying to like get to my games.
Cool. Well, what do we have housekeeping wise, Dylan?
Housekeeping wise, we've mentioned it several times, but we'll do another plug for our Discord. If you want to come into our Discord and let us know what's on your backlog, feel free to do that. There will be a link in the description. We'd love to, chit chat about backlogs with you. We've also got a YouTube video that came out this is 2 weeks from now. So this past week, where Andrew is going through all of the Gears of War games and ranking them. He's played all of them. So this is the first list where we are actually qualified according to the internet to talk about it, because he has played all of the games.
Until they give me some other reason to be disqualified.
Yeah,
which
I'm sure there's something else that you've done. But go check that video out. Did not see a leak about Gears of War, huh? I guess in this Microsoft thing.
Or Halo.
Haven't heard.
There was a lot of people talking about like, oh man, it's rough that we didn't see anything about Halo over the next like however many years. But I think a lot of that stuff was still codenamed. So even though it may have been in the leak, a lot of that stuff was hidden behind code names. So
like the Bethesda, like it was a very Bethesda heavy leak versus like,
because they were probably looking at that stuff a lot more, comparing that acquisition to this acquisition, because it was all the FTC stuff. So
because when did Gears 5 come out? It was
like 2019, I think.
Yeah. So it's been a solid
it's time
4 years.
We're due. Give me that chainsaw gun.
Because have they even announced Gears 6?
No.
Or have they just kind of like alluded to like Coalition's doing something?
Yeah, that. So, and they have done some like post-launch support for Gears 5. They did like the Hive Busters thing and stuff like that. So I'm not sure when support officially ended. Maybe that's when they consider that game to have been final. But yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah. Because if you're looking for some Gears of War stuff, check that out. Putting that video together made me want to like go back and like it added Gears of War the series to my backlog.
To your backlog.
Like I've played 1 and 3. I have played like most of 2, and I've never played. I think I've started 4, but I've not played like 4 or 5. But it is a cool series, and like putting that video together, I was like, I should play these again.
They're all on Game Pass.
Or for the first time. Yep.
Best deal in gaming.
It is. It is. Any housekeeping on your end?
For the podcast, I mean, it's all the usual stuff. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy our conversations, leaving us a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those places that'll let you do that. I know Good Pods is gaining a little bit of traction, and they have like a lot of curated lists and stuff that you can make it on. So like if we get some traction over there, that could help us out. But those kind of things. And then we plug the Discord. Definitely that's like the best place to interact with us. We are on social media. I'm kicking around. Probably once this semester ends, I'll get back into it a little bit more, but getting back on the TikToks and the shorts and stuff like that, the short form content a little bit more. But we are on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter's X, and if any of them die, we're not moving to Threads and Bluebird and crap. So Discord is like the best place to just keep up with us. So go there.
Yeah. Fair point.
Yeah. So, that's all we've got for this episode. Thanks for diving into our backlogs with us. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Friendly Neighborhood Gamers podcast. If so, we would greatly appreciate your help in growing the show and the community by giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other podcasting app that allows it.
We also have some great videos on our YouTube channel, including reviews, rankings, and other topics. We would really appreciate you checking it out. And if you want to keep up with everything going on in the neighborhood, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to jump in our Discord server.
We hope to see you there. Links for everything are in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening, and remember,
stay friendly, gamers.